Ready to open the door to a world of knowledge? Today, we're going to uncover a habit that is a game changer for personal and professional development. What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of Fast and Focus. I'm Zach Matthews, and you are watching episode 9 of our 10 Transformative Habits for Health and Success series. As this series has continued to reach new heights, we've been delving into habits that don't just reshape our routines, they affect our entire worldview in a positive way. And in this episode specifically, we're going to be talking about the transformative habit of listening to one growth-minded podcast episode every single day. So stay tuned because we're going to uncover the benefits of this simple yet powerful practice. Let me ask you something. Have you ever thought about the impact that a podcast or a YouTube channel could have on your personal or professional well-being? Because I almost like to think of it as like an informal classroom, if you will. So I think there are two major benefits to, that style of ingesting content for, growth-minded purposes. First and foremost, you're just giving yourself access to more knowledge, more diverse knowledge, really, because podcasts provide a wealth of information anyways, and then you're giving yourself, various podcasts to listen to, hosts from different walks of life that have different experiences, and you're allowing yourself to, just have a resource for continued learning. And then the second benefit to this informal classroom that we're talking about is just the personalized learning experience. So it isn't like, when you had to go to school, elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever, and you just had to sit in a classroom, you didn't have a choice, and you had to listen to whatever the teacher told you, and you had to write down notes so that you could pass the test that they set for themselves based on what they wanted you to learn, right? It's not like that at all. Listening to podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff like that, it allows us to learn what we want to learn, what we prioritize learning. So whether it is exercise, nutrition, learning a new skill, whatever that might be, that personalized learning experience, it just gives you it allows you to create and prioritize content that aligns with your interests and goals, and therefore you're learning more about things that you are actually interested in. Now, in order to get the maximum benefits from listening to podcasts and YouTube shows, we have to ask ourselves different questions to make sure that these podcasts, these shows that we're giving time to, are aligning with our values and goals and really giving us the information that we want in the first place. I feel like there are 3 different questions that we need to ask ourselves so that we can make sure the shows we're giving our time to are the ones that are going to deliver the most value for us. The first question being, is it relevant to what I want to accomplish? For example, if you are trying to lose weight, then you might pick up different shows, different podcasts and YouTube channels that focus on, exercise or, a specific form of diet or just, healthy habits in general, like Fast and Focus. But if you're looking at, if you're wanting to start a business, then you might look at podcasts that are more focused on leadership or, business growth or sales or marketing or whatever, right? You need to find podcasts and YouTube channels that align with your values so that you are not wasting your time, you're maximizing your time, and you're learning as much as you possibly can from different avenues to give yourself the best information to choose from. The second question that we need to ask ourselves when we're trying to find the right shows to listen to or watch is, quite frankly, am I interested? Believe me, take this from someone who's been dealing with ADHD his entire life. If you are not interested in the subject matter, you're not going to retain any of the information that's given to you, no matter how high quality that information might be. So always ask yourself, am I interested in this subject matter? And if not, what subject matters am I interested in? And what are the podcasts or YouTube shows that I can watch or listen to that relate and correlate to that subject, so that, again, I'm retaining that information. I'm not just wasting my time on my morning commute, on my walks, while I exercise, anything like that. Now, the third question that you need to ask yourself when you're looking for podcasts or YouTube channels to watch on a regular basis is just, quite frankly, can I trust them? Now, there are many different ways that you can feel that out. But assuming you don't personally know the person, the host that you're going to be watching or listening to, then you're going to have to feel that out for yourself. And the best way that I recommend doing that is just listening to an episode or two and using what I call the 33% rule. So I literally just listen to the first 33% of the episode. It doesn't matter if that episode is 2 hours long or 15 minutes long. I give it 33% of the time. So let's just say, for example, it's a 15-minute podcast episode. I'll give it the first 5 minutes. And if I don't like it in the first 5 minutes, probably not going to like the rest of the show. So as cruel as that might be, I only give them like 5 minutes or the first third of the show to convince me whether or not I want to keep listening or not. Because again, our time is finite and it's precious. And if I want to retain information and use my time to listen to things, I want to make sure that I'm listening to the best information possible from people that I can trust. Now, once you've found a growth-minded podcast that you are genuinely interested in listening to on a regular basis, then the question becomes, when are you going to listen to it? Because you have to allow yourself some time and make sure that you find a time that you can consistently focus on the information that's being given to you. Otherwise, there's no point in listening to the Growth-Minded podcast in the first place. So there are 3 times that I feel like are the best times for us in our normal routine to listen to podcasts and make sure that we're focusing and allow ourselves to focus on that while we're doing other things. So first and foremost is during your morning or afternoon commute. You're driving, you're stuck in your car anyways, you're probably getting frustrated with the traffic or the time that it's taking you to get to or from work. So why not just plug in a growth-minded podcast and listen to someone else talk for a little bit, okay? The second best time is while you're doing chores at home. Now, I like to do them like when I have to wash dishes or pick up the toys, my son's toys, at night after he goes to bed, whatever that looks like, cleaning up a little bit, whatever, doing the laundry, doesn't matter. Just plug in a growth-minded podcast and just listen to someone else talk and learn a thing or two while you're getting, boring chores done. There's no better use of that time beyond that. And then number 3, the third best time I feel like is while you're walking. Now, as we talked about before on the podcast, the Fast and Focused podcast, we've talked about that, the average human doesn't get as many steps as they need to on a daily basis. You want to shoot for anywhere between 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. So actually listening to a podcast can pair really nicely with walking every single day and getting your steps in. Now, if you don't currently prioritize walking, then maybe listening to a podcast is exactly what you need to motivate you to stick to that as well. So just give yourself, it could be like a 15-minute podcast or a 30-minute podcast, but just, start the podcast, put your earphones in, start walking. And then when the podcast is over, you can walk back home or whatever that looks like. Get on a treadmill. I don't care. But it's a great use of your time and you're getting physical and mental benefits, as a result. Now, there's one more thing that I want to cover when it comes to finding a growth-minded podcast and listening to it on a daily basis, and that is the note-taking side of all this, the reflection and retention of the information that you're given. And obviously, like if you're listening to a podcast while you're commuting, while you're driving, or while you're doing chores or whatever, you're not going to be able to multitask and write down notes. I get that. But I think that is where filtering comes into play, because you can just turn on a podcast while you're driving. And if it really, and let's be honest, not all episodes hit the same. Some episodes you're not going to care about, even if it's your favorite podcast. There's always episodes that you just do not care about. You don't like the guest, you don't like the topic, whatever, okay? But there are always episodes that you love that really just click with you for some reason. For example, I heard an episode on the future self concept like 2 years ago, and it's still one of my favorite episodes I've ever listened to for any podcast, okay? So when you come across an episode like that, then it's important to double down and give yourself some time later that night or early in the morning the next day to listen to that podcast again with some notes, with a piece of paper and a pen, and just writing down as much as you possibly can, or using the Notes app in your phone. I do that all the time too. But that is probably the most important part of all this, other than finding the right time to do it and finding the right podcast to listen to, is making sure that you're taking notes and retaining the information that you are especially interested in, because that is what's going to help you develop new skills. Remember, guys, every single episode that you listen to of a growth-minded podcast is a doorway to new insights and perspectives that you did not previously have. So make sure that you're maximizing the time you give yourself, and always put yourself in situations where you can focus on the information that's being given to you. And I challenge you guys, for the next 7 days, pick a podcast, one podcast, or it can be 2 or 3 if you really have that many podcasts that you enjoy, and listen to one growth-minded episode every single day for the next week. Then go back and take out some notes, pull out some notes, and write down 2 takeaways that you had from every single episode. Now, do this on a daily basis, because you can't expect yourself to remember everything from 7 days ago. But give yourself that time and commit to listening to one episode every single day. It's going to make the world a difference for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of our 10 Transformative Habits for Health and Success series. If you found this episode valuable, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that you can be updated anytime a new episode drops. And remember, your path to personal and professional growth is just one podcast away. So keep listening, stay resilient, and focus on the journey ahead.